Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. 6 people are missing after a container ship lost power and hit a major bridge in Baltimore, Maryland. With the carbon tax going up April 1st, we hear from political reporter Brian Lilly, who says the federal government is considering even more increases to the federal levy. And an Alberta NDP leadership hopeful has withdrawn her campaign and instead is supporting former Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. 6 people are missing after a container ship lost power and rammed into a major bridge in Baltimore. Crews managed to pull 2 people from the cold water. According to Maryland's governor, the ship's operators issued a mayday call enabling authorities to limit vehicle traffic to avoid an even further tragedy.
We know the Key Bridge. I've ridden over the Key Bridge countless times. So many of us know the Key Bridge because it is our normal commute. This is a place that is a normal commute route for over 30,000 Marylanders every single day. And so to hear the words that the Key Bridge has collapsed, it's shocking and heartbreaking. And immediately the first thought and the first ideas go back to what happened to the people, what was the impact on human life. But for every single one of us who are Marylanders, the words that the Key Bridge is gone, it still shakes us.
A couple of bridges in Edmonton are being named in honor of 2 fallen Edmonton police officers. The 2 bridges on Southwest Anthony Henday Drive over the North Saskatchewan River are being dedicated in honor of Constables Travis Jordan and Brett Ryan. Both died in the line of duty on March 16th of last year. Government officials say the naming of these bridges will honor the memory of the 2 Edmonton police officers.
The naming of these bridges is not merely a symbolic gesture. It is a testament to the enduring legacy of these 2 brave men. We will never forget their courage and their names. As Edmontonians cross these bridges every day, I hope that it serves as a reminder of the lasting impact and the ultimate sacrifice by these 2 heroes. On Southwest Anthony Henday Drive, the eastbound bridge will be named the Constable Travis Jordan Memorial Bridge. The westbound bridge will be named the Constable Brett Ryan Memorial Bridge.
The 2 officers, Jordan and Ryan, were responding to a family dispute when they were gunned down as they knocked on the door of an Edmonton home. The shooter, a 16-year-old, also shot his mother before turning the gun on himself. The teenager died, but his 55-year-old mother lived. The Alberta government announced that if Budget 2024 passes, it'll invest $618 million to improve access to surgeries and the acute care facilities that performs them. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange says the extra funding will help to reduce wait times and to boost capacity.
Through Budget 2024, we are investing $313 million over 3 years in the Alberta Surgical Initiative Capital Program. These funds will be used to renovate surgical suites and support areas in various communities across the province. We are also providing $305 million to Alberta Health Services to enable the completion of 310,000 surgical procedures this year. That's an increase of almost 6% from 2022-2023 year.
The Alberta NDP critic for health, Dr. Luann Metz, says the UCP are playing a dangerous game with the health and well-being of Albertans. She says they're doing so by pushing for more privatization into our health care by increasing the number of private surgeries by almost 20%. Alberta NDP leadership hopeful Raki Pancholi has pulled her campaign. Now instead, the Edmonton Whitemud MLA says she will put her support behind former Calgary Mayor Naheed Nenshi. He only recently joined the race to replace Rachel Notley as party leader. Pancholi says since Nenshi entered the race, he's helped to more than double the size of Alberta's NDP membership.
Recently, all Alberta NDP leadership candidates received updated membership sales numbers from the party, the first such update since Naheed Nenshi entered the race. Those numbers show that in the span of a week, Naheed has more than doubled the size of the Alberta NDP's membership. It's an incredible accomplishment, and invites so many more people into our movement. Growing our party has always been and will continue to be my first priority. Rather than compete with each other, I want to unite us behind our shared vision and mutual goals. So today, I am announcing that I will be ending my campaign to be leader of the Alberta NDP. We must move forward to offer a positive alternative to the UCP that Albertans can enthusiastically support in the next election. And I believe that means uniting behind the next leader, Naheed Nenshi.
The Alberta NDP will choose their new leader on June the 22nd. Contract negotiations continue between WestJet and its regional pilots. Now, you may recall the mainline pilots reached a deal with the airline last May. The chair of the WestJet Encore Master Executive Council of the Airline Pilots Association says they've been trying to get a new deal done for the past 7 months.
Conciliation period ended today, and where we're at, progress in the early stages of negotiation was actually quite good. However, since we've gotten to the bigger sections, the larger, more significant sections of the contract, momentum has slowed quite significantly since then. What we're looking for is improvement on our wages and working conditions, and improvement on our career progression. So those are the three main things we're trying to achieve. Next steps are, while we enter the 21-day cooling off period as of tomorrow, which could put us potentially into a legal job action or strike position as of April 17th. However, we're continuing to negotiate with the company in the meantime and during the 21-day cooling off period to reach a fair contract for us and the company, and to make sure that, we don't cause any disruptions to our passengers or their families, and for any of their vacations that they might go on around that time.
Bridge City News reached out to WestJet for comment, and company officials responded with an email which read, "Our focus remains at the bargaining table. We're committed to achieving an agreement that addresses their unique concerns and is competitive within Canada's airline industry. We believe, with the commitment from the parties involved, an agreement is achievable." Well, some areas of southwestern Alberta experienced some light flurries again today. Jeanette Rocher is in now with a quick peek at the forecast. Jeanette, it looks like kind of a mixed bag weather-wise over the next few days.
Yeah, well, it really is, Hal. We've got some flurries, we've got some sunshine, we've got some plus temperature, and even a minus temperature in there before we get to this weekend. So yes, mixed bag is absolutely right. As we head into this evening, we are seeing clear skies overnight, a low of -4. And then into Wednesday, we've got a mix of sun and cloud and high of 6 degrees before we get into more flurries on a Thursday. And I'll be back later in the show to give you details about that, as well as our weather across the nation. Hal?
Great, thanks so much, Jeanette. Lethbridge City Council has once again declared April 7th as Green Shirt Day. Now, Green Shirt Day was created to build awareness of organ donation and register organ donors across Canada. The day was championed by Toby and Bernie Boulay, the parents of Logan Boulay, a young Lethbridge hockey player who played for the Humboldt Broncos. He became an organ donor after the tragic bus crash in Saskatchewan that claimed his and 15 other lives. In a statement, Lethbridge Mayor Blaine Higgin said Logan Boulay will always be remembered as a remarkable young man. He saved lives, and his inspiring legacy will continue to save lives. I wanted to keep bringing this item to Council annually rather than as a one-time declaration to continually highlight Logan's impact. Well, the first round of the 2024 WHL playoffs kicks off on Friday. The Lethbridge Hurricanes will travel to Swift Current to take on the Broncos for games 1 and 2. It'll mark the 8th straight season the Canes have qualified for the postseason. The Canes finished with a 4-3-1 regular season record against the Broncos. Assistant coach Matt Anholt explains how his team is preparing and how this series will be a real tough test.
It's a real tough matchup. They're the hottest team on our conference since the trade deadline. They've, added a lot of pieces. Connor Geekie is one of the best players in the league. Obviously, world junior player. They're old. They're deep. It's going to be a tough matchup for us. We know that rink will probably be sold out. It's 2,000 seats. Swift Current gets behind their fan base. Our players are going to have a little bit of a wake-up call, I think, in game 1 of how crazy it can be in there. Not a lot of guys have played in a rink like that. So, it's going to be a tough series, but we're really confident with our group. Especially with Harrison and net, he could win us any game at any time, and with how our defense core has been playing in the second half lately, anything can happen. We can neutralize. Doesn't matter whoever it is, and with our forwards, we have some game breakers up there that can score at any given moment.
The Canes will play games 3 and 4 of their first-round playoff series against the Broncos on Tuesday, April 2nd and Wednesday, April 3rd at the NMAX Center beginning at 7 p.m. Individual playoff tickets are now on sale. RCMP on the Piikani Nation have charged a man with 23 criminal offenses. Police say while following up on a theft of a motorbike, they located a blue truck at a residence near Brockett that was previously involved in a flight from police in Fort Macleod on March the 12th. After a search warrant was conducted, police confiscated 7 rifles, ammunition, and other firearms parts. 37-year-old Jesse Flett faces a wide range of charges, including unlawful possession of a firearm, breaking his probation order, and possession of stolen property. He was also charged with dangerous driving and failing to stop for police. Flett will be in Pincher Creek Provincial Court on Thursday. Police in Saskatchewan say their major crimes unit is investigating the deaths of 4 people in the southeastern community of Neudorf. RCMP say they received a call for a wellness check on Sunday night at a home which is located about 140 kilometers northeast of Regina and made a very grim discovery. They say the dead were all adults and their deaths are considered suspicious. Police have said their early investigation suggests there's no immediate risk to public safety. The Manitoba government says the risk of spring flooding this year is low to moderate in most areas. That's due to low soil moisture at freeze-up and below normal winter snowfall in most areas. The province says it appears that the Red River floodway that protects Winnipeg will not need to be operated. As always, government officials warn that things could change depending upon weather in the coming weeks. As you've heard on Bridge City News, the federal carbon tax is going up by 23% on April the 1st. According to political reporter Brian Lilly, Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault was asked if we could see another increase after that, even though Canadians are still struggling financially.
The carbon tax is going to keep going up past $170. Remember when it was much lower and the Liberals went into the 2019 election saying, oh, we haven't decided that we're going to increase it. And then immediately after, they jacked it up to $170 a ton. We could be looking at that again with this price just continually climbing, driving up the cost of everything.
Mr. Lilly will also give us his thoughts on where the Canadian government stands on policy in the Middle East. That full interview is coming up in the second half of our program. Helicopters carried 18 Canadians out of Haiti on Tuesday. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly told reporters on Monday that 18 had already left, but it turns out the choppers were grounded due to bad weather. Canadian passport holders are being offered a chance to leave as escalating violence by armed gangs is causing food shortages across the Caribbean island nation. The American ambassador to the United Nations is urging Canada to keep supporting the main agency that provides aid to Palestinians in Gaza. That's according to our country's International Development Minister, Ahmed Hussein. This is after Canada, the United States, and 14 other nations pulled funding for UNRWA in January when Israel accused 12 of its workers of participating in the October 7th Hamas terrorist attacks. Around 2 weeks after his meeting with Linda Thomas-Greenfield, Hussein announced that Canada would be sending UNRWA its $25 million April funding as scheduled. The Israel Defense Forces have raided the Al-Amal hospital in Khan Yunis following intelligence reports that Hamas is set up inside of the complex. We have more now from TBN Israel's Middle East correspondent, Yair Pinto.
The sweeps were the result of intelligence recently acquired by the IDF and the Shin Bet, according to which there are terrorists in the El Amal hospital area who are using civilian infrastructure for terrorist purposes. The Palestinian Red Crescent was also present in the hospital, and Hamas was caught red-handed using their radio network for terrorist communications, so the IDF cut this communications link off. It is important to note that cutting off wireless, cellular, radio, and internet communications in a combat zone is standard procedure and in accordance with international law. But before it got cut off, the Palestinian Red Crescent personnel reported that IDF soldiers had entered the hospital. Until yesterday, the IDF was clearing Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists out of the Shifa hospital in Gaza City, arresting hundreds of terrorists and eliminating those who resisted arrest. Included in those arrested were dozens of senior operatives who were using the hospital as a base to direct terrorist operations in Judea and Samaria.
Wow. Volunteers from the Christian relief organization Samaritan's Purse have been really helping homeowners in Ohio and Indiana. They're trying to recover from damage caused by devastating tornadoes that swept through their region. Officials say they've been overwhelmed and more volunteers are still needed.
We're here in Selma, Indiana, as well as Winchester, Indiana, where Thursday night a powerful EF3 tornado came through this area, just doing catastrophic damage. These are small rural farming communities and really caught the community off guard. We have another site over in Ohio where they're doing the same work for the folks around that Lakeview area where it was so hard hit by another EF3 tornado.
There's trees on houses, there's trees laying on the yard. People can't get in their houses for the trees, and driveways are blocked.
We just ask for your prayer support for the homeowners as well as Samaritan's Purse volunteers as they're in the community working.
It's cold today, and a lot of these people don't have anywhere to go, and they need to stay in their houses. So the sooner we can get the roofs tarped and everything, or they can move back in them, sooner the better we can do that.
Winter has returned here to east central Indiana. We really need your help as quickly as possible. So go to the website, find out how you can be involved.
Yeah, winter's returned here as well. We've had quite a bit of snow in southwestern Alberta over the past few days, and the snow has been melting and turning to ice, making for a slippery commute. But that should be changing, however. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. The mercury has been slowly climbing here in the city of Lethbridge. Jeanette Rocher is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it's slowly warming up. It's still below our seasonal value for this time of year, which is what, around 8 degrees?
Yeah, that's right. 8 is the higher end of seasonal right now. We'll be very close to that. Well, on Wednesday, we're looking at a high of 6 degrees. As we get into Thursday, though, we've got more flurries coming at us. High of 1 degree that day. And then down to the minuses for Friday, looking at a high of only -4. That's the only minus in that 7-day forecast there. Then climbing up to +4 on Saturday, and then 5 degrees on Sunday, looking at flurries as well that day. And then look what happens on Monday. We're jumping all the way up to the teens. So high of 14 degrees on Monday to round out that 7-day forecast, putting us well above the average high for this time of year, which is 8. Average low -5. 19 was our high temperature on this day back in 1946. And in 1955, we had the chilliest on record, which was -24. Sun rose this morning at 7:19. Our sun set this evening at 7:55. We are looking at 12 hours and 36 minutes of daylight, 4 minutes longer than we saw yesterday. So we are seeing some showers with risks of afternoon thunderstorms in both Victoria and Vancouver tomorrow. Victoria sitting at a high of 11 degrees tomorrow. Could see 80K winds at certain parts of the day and up to 60K winds near the Juan de Fuca Strait in Vancouver, but a high of 9 degrees there. High of 10. Look at that. Double digits for Edmonton. Clearing up in the morning after some fog patches. Clearing up for the rest of the day there. Calgary looking at sun and cloud for most of the day with a high of 7 degrees. As we get into the rest of the prairies, we're seeing mainly clear skies, especially in Regina, high of 0 there, and -1 for a high in Saskatoon, and -6 in Winnipeg with periods of light snow. As we get into Toronto, seeing 40% chance of showers there, high of 10 degrees. Ottawa seeing showers in the morning, clearing up, and then 40% more showers later on in the day, high 15 there though. Look at that temperature. High of 14 in Montreal, and seeing showers clearing up in the morning. It should be clear throughout the rest of the day. As we get into Atlantic Canada, sitting at 11 degrees for Fredericton tomorrow. 5 millimeters of rain is expected. Same thing for Halifax, looking at 5 millimeters of rain. 8 for a high there, high of 10 in Charlottetown, expecting showers. Clear skies, though, in St. John's, high of 3 degrees. And as you get further inland, looking more like 8 degrees, so getting warmer. There you have it. That is your forecast.
Canadian productivity really needs to improve. Now, that's according to the Senior Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada. Carolyn Rogers says the Canadian economy has changed and says that inflation will continue to be a threat moving forward despite higher interest rates. Rogers says trade tensions and climate change are contributing factors. She says Canadian companies need to really work with their employees to help increase productivity, which is really beneficial for everyone.
When a company increases productivity, it means more revenue, which allows it to pay higher wages to its workers without having to raise prices. Ultimately, higher productivity helps the economy generate more wealth for everyone. The bottom line is that benefits from raising productivity are there, no matter what your role is, for workers, for businesses, and for central bankers too.
Rising inflation has impacted the Canadian housing market so much so that younger home buyers are finding it very difficult to afford a home. Jeff Reimer, real estate agent here in Lethbridge, shares what he's observing with some of his younger clients.
The ones that I'm working with, the selection is harder. So, they look and then they get discouraged when the one pops up that they can afford where they want, and it's sold right away or multiple offers. So that is a bit challenging for them, but they've also had to save up their down payment and then qualify at a certain rate. And with the interest rates having gone up, they do qualify for less. So that is a challenge so we're seeing a few more people maybe use a co-signer or buy together or pool their resources to accomplish that. And we're seeing, I saw a case here not long ago where 3 generations were involved in the purchase, the grandparent, the parents, and the kids, so that they can make it happen.
Make sure you catch the full interview with real estate agent Jeff Reimer and BCM producer Michael Clausen coming up after Business News. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 29 points on the day to finish at 21,912. The Dow was down 31 points to 39,282. The S&P 500 was down 14 on the day to 5203, and the Nasdaq was down 68 points to 16,315. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 68 cents to 81.27 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 4 cents to $1.58 US. Gold was up $4.84 on the day to $21.7667 US an ounce, and silver was down 26 cents to $24.42 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.30 per bushel, barley's at $6.42, canola's at $13.90, and corn is at $7.52 per bushel. Live cattle April contract was down $1.30 to $186.20. Feeder cattle were down 50 cents to $249.45, and lean hogs April contract was up 58 cents to 85.15. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.61 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta government announced that if Budget 2024 passes, it'll invest $618 million to improve access to surgeries and the acute care facilities that performs them. Health Minister Adriana LaGrange says the extra funding will help to reduce wait times and to boost capacity. The non-confidence vote on Parliament Hill did not pass, but the fight over the federal carbon tax continues. The always colorful Brian Lilly will have more details for us in just a few moments. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of local stories and interviews.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. The Easter season is upon us. Parallel Church in Lethbridge invites you to their Good Friday service taking place March 29th at 10:30 a.m. Come for a thoughtful message, inspirational music, and connection. Children up to grade 5 will also have an opportunity for their own experience in learning about the sacred time we call Easter. Discover unique gifts and support local art and culture. The Lethbridge Handmade Market is taking place Saturday, April 13th at the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. 140 artisans will be displaying their beautiful creations, plus enter to win door prizes and a fun scavenger hunt for the kids. Parking is free and admission is $7 per person. Kids 14 and under can enter for free. For more information, visit lethbridgehandmademarket.ca. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
As you've heard on Bridge City News, the non-confidence vote did not pass in Ottawa, but the fight over the carbon tax continues. Now, to chat about this in more detail is political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre continues to draw very large crowds with his Axe the Tax rallies, But Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault, in a recent interview, did not rule out even more carbon tax hikes that are currently planned.
It was remarkable to watch. Here he is. He knows everything that's been going on. He can read a poll just like anybody else. And he was asked, well, once the carbon tax gets to $170 a ton, remember, it's at 65 right now. They're going to triple it to $170 a ton, or just about triple it to $170 a ton by 2030. And he said, well, the interviewer said, well, what about beyond that? And he said, well, we haven't made a decision yet, but we will keep increasing the price of pollution. So the carbon tax is going to keep going up past $170. Remember when it was much lower and the Liberals went into the 2019 election saying, oh, we haven't decided that we're going to increase it. And then immediately after, they jacked it up to $170 a ton. We could be looking at that again with this price just continually climbing, driving up the cost of everything.
Now, while the Trudeau Liberals insist that the carbon tax leaves 80% of families better off financially, Brian, the parliamentary budget officer says the majority of families are actually worse off. So let me ask you, who is telling the truth here?
The parliamentary budget officer is, and I'll give you a proof point. Statistics Canada, in their January Consumer Price Index report, that's the inflation report, they noted that inflation was lower in Saskatchewan because as of January 1st, Scott Moe had ordered their Crown Corporation, Sask Energy, not to collect the carbon tax on home heating. So you take the carbon tax off home heating, inflation falls. Doesn't that show you that the price is going up? Yves Giroux, the parliamentary budget officer, was before a Commons committee last week, repeating his message that once you factor in all the issues, most families pay more than they get back. We discussed last week, Hal, how the rebates are all based on averages. And you living out in Lethbridge drive a lot more than I do living in downtown Toronto, but they just average it all out. And my condo is a lot cheaper to heat than your home, but they just average it out. And so you're paying, most Canadians who live your average suburban lifestyle are going to be paying more, and then they get back. And then the parliamentary budget officer says you factor in lost productivity, lower economic activity, the GST on top, that drives it up. The Liberals don't want to admit it. They don't want to acknowledge that this has driven up prices of absolutely everything.
When the majority of MPs voted against the non-confidence motion, MPs with the Liberals, the Bloc, and the NDP, you wrote that they were voting against the mood of the nation. Now, you also say that this government will not be defeated due to the pension coalition that will soon govern Ottawa. Can you explain?
So voting against the mood of the nation is easy. 69% of Canadians said they don't want the carbon tax increase. That cuts across all party lines at that point. You've only got the true believers saying, oh no, please increase my taxes more. The majority of Canadians are saying this is hurting. You've got premiers across the country saying, please stop, including Wab Kinew, New Democrat in Manitoba, Andrew Furey, a Liberal in Newfoundland and Labrador. You've got NDP candidates or candidates for the leadership of the Alberta NDP saying, elect me and I'll fight to scrap the carbon tax. So this is not a popular policy, and yet the Trudeau Liberals keep pushing ahead on it. And when 64% of MPs vote for something that 69% of the public doesn't want, they're going against the mood of the nation. But these changes to the Elections Act will mean that, in my view, we will definitely not see an election before October 2025. And that small change is they're going to move the date for the fixed election from October 20th to October 27th. Now, the line from the government is they're doing this for two reasons. The Hindu festival of Diwali starts around October 20th or on October 20th, and Alberta is scheduled to have municipal elections then. So they want to move the date not forward, they want to move it back by 1 week to October 27th, 2025. And the reason for that is that on October 21st, 2025, 80 different MPs will qualify for their pension. Now, if you're a Liberal or a New Democrat, and to some degree a Bloc Québécois MP, you have to be worried if an election were held now, you'd lose your seat and not get your pension. You move it back by a week, they're guaranteed their pension. So even if they lose, According to the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, depending on what their salary was, based on if they ran committees, had parliamentary secretary positions, what have you, their pension would start at the age of 55 at between $32,000 and $49,000 a year. And the total hit to the Canadian taxpayers, if all of these guys lost their jobs and took their pensions, it'd be about $120 million. Moving the election one day doesn't change anything in your life or my life. How? Okay, well, one week. But to these guys, this matters a lot. And can you imagine any MP in the Liberal Bloc or NDP voting for a non-confidence motion if one comes up again? The Conservatives would probably be like, yeah, we'll win our seat back. The rest of them, no. This guarantees them that they will not vote for anything but keeping Trudeau in power until that time.
When we chatted with Franco Terrazzano, the federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, he called that very shady.
Mm-hmm.
The Prime Minister of Greece was in Canada this week asking that we supply his country and Europe with liquefied natural gas, LNG, Brian. Now, is there any chance the Trudeau government will actually seize this opportunity?
No, none at all. And you'll recall that Germany came in August of 2022 saying, we want to buy your natural gas. We want to replace Russian natural gas, the natural gas that's funding the war in Ukraine. Trudeau said, well, there's never been a business case for this. Japan showed up. They wanted to buy our liquefied natural gas. They were told the same thing. No, we're not really interested. We're about to open one port on the West Coast that was approved under the Harper government. It's taken longer to build than it should have, but it's finally about to open. That will be our only LNG export plant. Meanwhile, the United States has built 8, I believe, over the last couple of years. Qatar has ramped up their production and their export capacity. Germany built an import facility in 194 days. The Greek prime minister came here and he said, look, we want to buy it, not only for our market, but to supply the Balkans, to supply Ukraine. This would remove coal-fired electricity plants from the grid in other parts of the world. And that would lower global emissions. If they're truly all about lowering global emissions, and they say emissions the emissions don't know boundaries, well, then they should be on this. But they're not. And they're not because it would mean helping the oil and gas sector in Alberta. It would mean Canada's emissions would go up a bit. But you know what? There was a study by the National Bank that Pierre Poilievre cited at the Vancouver Board of Trade speech he gave, where they pointed out that if we replaced enough coal-fired plants just in India, it would be the equivalent of removing 4 years' worth of Canada's emissions in a single year. That's remarkable. That's the type of thing that we should be saying, yes, let's do it, but they won't do it because they've got an ideological opposition to the oil and gas industry.
Brian, a number of Canadians want to know where this government stands when it comes to Gaza. Do we support Israel? Is there more support for the people of Gaza and those politicians who want to see an independent Palestinian nation? So where is Canada's policy on the Middle East right now?
It's confusing. We've got a de facto arms embargo, though the government, different government officials will say, no, we don't. And yet Melanie Joly says, yes, we do. They voted for one in the motion. That would show that they are against Israel. Now, I don't know anybody that, wants to go against the Gazan people, but definitely against Hamas. I worry that the government is moving towards a position that puts them close to supporting Hamas. We're demanding a ceasefire yet again. Well, Hamas just refused a ceasefire deal that was negotiated by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States. So their own allies are helping negotiate the ceasefire agreement, and Hamas is saying no. Time and again, they just want to keep this war going. And this war is going because of Hamas. But all of Canada's energy is put upon Israel. All of the pressure is put upon Israel. All of the shame put upon Israel. We are blaming Israel for being attacked and then defending itself.
Now, we're approaching the 4-year anniversary of the May 1st, 2020 government decree to ban 1,500 types of guns in Canada and begin a gun buyback. Brian, a new report shows the government spent about $42 million on this project, but has not taken possession of a single gun. So what are they spending the money on?
Partly on IBM and outside consultants. It's not quite as bad as ArriveCan yet, but it's getting there. You've got the salaries. So you've got 60 people working on this full-time at Public Safety Canada. You've got 2 working full-time at Service Canada. You've got, I believe, let me try and remember the number, 5.825 full-time equivalents at Public Services and Procurement Canada. I mean, that takes you back to your Ottawa days, Hal, right? The ultimate in government speak, and about 15 Mounties. So you've got just over 80 people working on this full time. You've got the photo ops, you've got the announcements, but you don't have any guns. Can you imagine what that $42 million could have done at border crossings where gun smuggling is a real issue? On trying to intercept the guns that are the real problem? That would have been far more beneficial than spending $42 million to build a system to take guns from licensed, law-abiding hunters and sport shooters.
A judge in Calgary, Brian, has ruled that a 27-year-old woman with autism can move forward with medical assistance in dying despite the objections by her parents. Now, when MAID was first introduced, did anyone really expect we'd be offering government-assisted suicide to people with autism?
You know, I remember speaking to opponents who warned of a slippery slope, and I doubt even they thought that it would turn into a giant water slide that we're all just hurtling down at breakneck speed. We are beyond a slippery slope here, Hal. And the judge ruling in it said that her autonomy trumps everything. Well, when did we decide that your autonomy includes getting the government's help in killing yourself? She has autism and ADHD, we're told. Don't know many of details of how difficult life is, but that's the type of person that you help, that you support, not that you say, well, come on over here, we've got another solution, you can end your life. And I'm very concerned about where we're going. Polls show most Canadians are very concerned. Parliamentarians, I think, heard the message and put the brakes on this when they were going to expand it even further. But I'm not sure how we go back and put this genie back in the bottle. It's frightening the direction that we're going. Now, the judge in this case in Calgary has done a 30-day suspension of the verdict to see if either side wants to appeal. But if they don't appeal, then in 30 days, this woman can end her life for something that people deal with and live with every day of the year in this country. It's got to be heartbreaking and worrisome for an awful lot of families who have a loved one with similar conditions.
Brian, the state funeral for Brian Mulroney was held recently in Montreal. You wrote about the eulogies he received from Caroline Mulroney, Wayne Gretzky, and Jean Charest. Some made us laugh, and some of the stories even made us cry.
If you had a dry eye after Caroline Mulroney's eulogy for her father, or her daughter singing her grandfather's favorite song while choking back tears, I'm not sure you're human. That was an emotional moment for anyone who's lost a loved one. You can definitely relate to a family going through pain. Wayne Gretzky, though, made everybody laugh. He got up there, the great one, described how he first got to know the Mulroneys, still playing in Edmonton with the Oilers, got asked to do a charity hockey game. They became fast friends and remained friends after. And he got up, and I think he was third or fourth in speaking order. There were 6 eulogies, and he got up and he said, well, you're going to figure out which one's in politics and which one's the hockey player real quick. And he spoke without notes, told his funny stories real quick, and left. But he left everyone feeling better. And then, there's a lot of political speeches, including Jean Charest talking about how in 84 and 88, Mulroney really brought together Albertans and Quebecers and united the country in a common cause. Absolutely, that fell apart by 93. But, he was describing the way that he was able to pull on different threads of Canada and bring us together. So it was a moving and a fitting tribute to a prime minister who was transformational in more ways than one.
You know what, dude? It also fell apart in 86 and 89 when the Flames and the Habs met in the Stanley Cup Finals. Montreal winning in 86 and Calgary winning in 89 in Montreal, I might add, with Lanny McDonald. Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Hal.
Canada continues to be in a housing crisis, with some markets experiencing a serious shortage of housing. Rising inflation has increased interest rates. Many Canadians, including young married couples, are finding it more difficult to afford a home today. To talk about this in more detail and about the housing market in Alberta is Jeff Reimer. He has been a Lethbridge realtor for 30 years with Royal LePage. Jeff, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Hey, nice to chat with you, Michael.
It's great to have you on. Now, recent headlines say overall the average price of a home of all types in Lethbridge have gone up by an astounding 21.9%. And that's over this last year. Now, apparently that is almost double the average price increase across Alberta. Could you tell us some of the factors or reasons behind this massive jump?
Sure. I mean, that statistic is a little bit hard to explain exactly, but it's really a snapshot of this January over last January's stats. So it is a marked increase, but your average house per se across the board did not go up 22% necessarily. So the statistic is what it is, but when you look at the supply and demand issues right now, essentially that's what's driving the prices up. And there's less inventory and people are still moving into Lethbridge, so that's inching the prices up. But the typical house a year ago would not be a full 22% more today necessarily. I mean, some could be close to that, but not all price ranges and not across the board.
Right. So what's a young couple or a new family coming to Lethbridge an area to do if they're looking to buy something? Where would you suggest that they start?
Well, I mean, definitely get in the market information early and start looking at the data. And depending on your urgency, is if you see something you like, act diligently, but act quickly. Yeah, if you wait, especially in the lower price ranges,
Gotcha.
Lethbridge is average and below. The market can be moving pretty quick if it's a good house or a good condominium or semi-detached home.
Right.
And they're moving pretty quick.
So maybe buyers don't have the luxury of location and taking their time. What do you say would be the main factor that those home purchasers are looking for?
The location is huge. Just the other day, I was working with somebody, and their preference was a certain area of Lethbridge, and they did settle for a different area because the home was better, but it wasn't their top choice for location. The Lethbridge being relatively easy to get around in and a quick drive anywhere made it at least possible for them to consider the other options to get in at the price point they needed. So.
Right. Now, what about home builders? Is there a lot of new home builds going on in and around Lethbridge?
That's an interesting thing that also affects the stats because year over year, there may not have been the same amount of builders or developers putting their product on the MLS system. So that can skew the numbers as well. Like when I look back at, let's say, a semi-detached home selling for on average this January for $364,000, I can look back that same stat, let's say in January 2021, and say that it was $209,000. Well, that's a drop jaw number difference. But what you're going to find is in certain developments, something like a semi-detached home on the west side of a new construction, geared to a mature buyer, could easily sell for 400, 450 developed. And if that product wasn't on the MLS last year, that's quite the skewed difference. So you got to remember on scale in Lethbridge, because of our numbers, it's a snapshot only. So you really have to look at the entire trend and look at examples year over year, and always just ask your agent for help and counsel on that. They like talking about that and giving advice. So agents are happy to do that.
Yeah. So speaking of agents and that research, can you kind of talk about the heavy lifting that you do for your clients?
Well, every time you spend that much money, you're concerned about how much to pay, right? Whether you've done it before or it's your first time, knowing what price to offer. You look at statistics and you look at past sales in the neighborhood and try to guide them on what a fair price would be. But the past doesn't always dictate the current, right? Especially with supply and demand issues. So you can say, well, your last two neighbors sold 3 months ago for X amount. But if there's nothing on the market and they're up for today, and there's several people looking for that home, it's not as relevant, right? So you really have to gauge your information and have the agent and the consumer discuss those nuances together candidly, and then say, okay, how urgent is your purchase? What is your budget? What is your primary needs and wants? And then weigh that against their desperation motivation of the buyer and then also of the seller. And that's also going to ring true if a seller, let's say, puts it on the market at 5% below market value to try to get, multiple offers at once. You have to know that. You have to gauge that, because if you come in at what you think last month's stats were, you're going to be SOL. So it's really important to have the buyer and the agent discuss those prices, discuss the trends, look at the data, discuss it candidly, before making an offer for all purchase. That's really wise.
Right. So with this inventory being the way that it is right now, are you seeing a lot of multiple offers on properties?
More, certainly. Yeah. If you offer on a place in the first day or two, you're always nervous that there could be another one right behind you if there isn't one on the table already. And then certainly in some cases, like, if they do price it at or slightly below market, their goal may very well to be get multiple offers. And then, yeah, you're seeing.
Gotcha. I never thought of that. I guess that could be actually a listing strategy, is to price it so that you actually do get multiple offers. Now, I wanted to ask you, we've been talking about Lethbridge specifically, but are you seeing more people moving to bedroom communities like Tabor or Barnwell or Nobleford?
Absolutely, there's a trend of that. With the interest rates being a little higher, it's to get the same house per se or the same square footage. Yeah, you may not be able to get it in Lethbridge in someone's budget. So they are looking at other places, and places like, yeah, Tabor, Nobleford, Fort McLeod. They're selling quicker in those price points. And what we're finding is that the prices are compacting. So when the interest rates are higher, the higher houses are, bigger payments. And so people might tend to buy a little more affordable or only qualify for less. And then sellers, when their mortgages come renew here, they're always going to consider whether they need to downsize or lower their expectations for their next house. And then with the demand of new people coming in and the shortage, then the affordable homes are getting pushed up. So you're finding that compacting of the prices. That's a real interesting phenomenon to see, but you're following it when every time you're looking at buying a house, you got to know those trends. And yeah, out of towners definitely, Lethbridge is still a short drive to any of those communities. Within an hour of here. In some big cities, they go an hour to work every day just across the city. So someone's moving here from BC, Vancouver, Ontario. In comparison, that drive is not as drastic, and it's being considered more and more.
Right. Now, mentioning other provinces, are you seeing a lot of buyers from other provinces coming into southern Alberta?
Yeah, certainly there has been that trend in the last couple of years for sure. Buyers from British Columbia and Ontario, and when they sell a townhouse, for example, at $1 million, and they can come here and buy a really nice house for 500,000 and another revenue property or two with those same funds, it's real enticing for them to consider that. And then if they have young kids, they're going, well, our young kids aren't going to be able to buy in this environment in, let's say, Vancouver if you grew up there. And so they're considering moving to these, especially after COVID too, right? People wanted to get out of the bigger centers. So it's kind of been a trend the last few years. And Alberta, especially southern Alberta, offers a really good options.
Right. And circling back to buyers' choices, are you finding that there are a lot of people maybe buying revenue properties or going into apartments or townhouses instead of a detached house?
Yeah, for sure, because the price per door is less. So, a landlord's going to look at the return on investment, and if they can get in that door for cheaper, the rents are a little higher, right, with inflation. So, as we see the rents increase, that when an owner can put their money into a bond market at such percent, they want to get a reasonable return on their property. So if the rents can sustain that, then yeah, they're buying those up, and it's also putting pressure on the first time market because the landlords are also looking at those. And then Lethbridge in southern Alberta, very much a retirement community because we're nice and warm here, and we're further south. And so you're seeing retirement, we're seeing new home buyers, we're seeing landlords, investment buyers. So that's putting a lot of pressure on the lower price points, and that's also moving the prices up in those ranges.
So that being said, are you finding that maybe the number of young people buying homes has been decreasing? Are they kind of getting having too much competition then for those houses that they'd qualify for?
Yeah, the exact stat I would hard to put a finger on, but yeah, I would say so because the ones that I'm working with, the selection is harder. So, they look and then they get discouraged when the one pops up that they can afford where they want and it's sold right away or multiple offers. So that is a bit challenging for them, but they've also had to save up um, their down payment and then qualify at a certain rate. And with the interest rates having gone up, they do qualify for less. So that is a challenge for. So we're seeing a few more people maybe use a cosigner or buy together or pool their resources to accomplish that. And we're seeing, I saw a case here not long ago where three generations were involved in the purchase, the grandparent, the parents, and the kids, so that they can make it happen.
Well, that's smart. And that was actually my next question. I was going to ask if you are seeing generations coming together. And can you talk, are there some advantages? There must be advantages to that.
Yeah, and with suites, especially legal suites, where you can get proper insurance and proper conformity with the safety of the city, legal suites have quite a big draw as prices go up in any community, right? So legal suites have done really well in the city because that need for more housing and for affordability and combining, maybe parents on one level, kids on the other is becoming a little bit more common, and a legal suite does that nicely. So the premium on those has been quite rich, and if a builder has taken that step of buying a legal suite or building a legal suite, then the return on that has been reasonable, I think, because of that demand.
Yeah, that's really something to keep in mind. I know you and I have talked in the past about the need to make sure that your suite in the house you're looking at is compliant. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Maybe unpack that, why the buyer needs to pay a little bit more attention to some of those nuances.
Yeah, it's a choice of the risk tolerance of any particular buyer. Ultimate best if everything was perfect according to codes, but there's a lot of illegal suites in Lethbridge. And so much so that a lot of brokerages are requiring their agents to put the words illegal right in the advertisements. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not safe, but they were probably not to code and they may not be safe or they may not have all the elements of safety. So, there's a lot more to it than just the zoning or the application or egress windows, right? There's alarm systems. There's the width of steps. There's proper parking. There's the actual zoning, smoke detectors. Firewall, heat sources, size of windows. It's not just about being able to get out, but firemen are able to get in. So people ask, "Oh, do I just need to do bigger windows?" Well, it's a lot more than that usually. And the city had a program before where you could take non-compliant places if you could prove in the past that they had been rented out and bring them into a safety minimum target with like fire codes and such. And that program, as I understand, has ended so a few years back now. So if you're going to want to make a suite, you're going to be necessary, as I understand it, to bring it up to legal duplex standards, which could mean two heating sources and making sure the zoning's proper and everything.
Yeah, well, and even fire blocking. Like there's, in looking at this, you and I have talked about this before, even the liability issue of keeping your tenants safe and wanting what's
Yeah, if
best
there's
for
a
them.
fire, right? You
Yeah.
want to make sure that your insurance is going to cover you, and you certainly just don't want a fire, right? They're
Absolutely.
horrible. So you want to avoid that at all costs, and that's why we have codes, right? So
That's
it is
right.
important to follow them. In a perfect world, everything would be legal. So it's something to consider, and to certainly don't hesitate to talk to the city because they're the experts on that. And talk to a contractor, talk to your agent about it. Check with the city; they can give you the information on a particular property of whether where it's at with that, and then make your decisions based on that.
That's right. And as hard as it may be to believe for some people, the city does actually have the property owner's best interests in mind.
Yeah, for sure, right? They all they want is
Mm-hmm.
safety. They want neighborhoods that are, attractive and
That's
aren't
right.
overcrowded. So it does come down to zoning and density and all those things too in the city's plans. And the city wants to make housing available for people. So, they'll work with homeowners as much as possible to get the best density that a neighborhood can support.
That's right. So as we wrap things up, there apparently are rumors that interest rates could be coming down. Do you have any predictions as to where the Southern Alberta real estate market is headed in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, things are steady. People are moving in. The rates, at least, are holding pattern right now. Talk of them coming down. So, yeah, I would say it's encouraging for Southern Alberta. Prices should do well and fairly stable. And Lethbridge and area has always been a very stable market. We don't react quite as drastically to the oil, but it still affects us, but less proportionately and less quickly. So yeah, it's a good time right now to own a house. It's a little more challenging to buy, but still some good opportunities, and the prices are still reasonable in relation to other communities. You look at the prices in Vancouver, Toronto, and it's just not affordable for a lot of people. So great place to live here in Lethbridge, and
Yeah.
exciting times.
Jeff, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you for
Thanks for the
being here.
opportunity to discuss with you, Michael. Have a great day.
That was Jeff Reimer. He has been a Lethbridge realtor for 30 years with Royal LePage. For all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Michael Clausen. Thanks for watching.